Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I want to really thank my friend Jeff Merkley, who is literally at the lead on so many of these fights. And I want to get right to it. Um, Anna on Facebook has asked, how can we protect people who are the most vulnerable? The over 8 million Americans who are most in need of healthcare coverage, who will be stopped from Medicaid as a result of this bill. And Anna, I got to tell you, it's actually, as Jeff just mentioned, it's more than 8 million. The estimates are closer to 13 to 14 million. And let's drill down for a minute on just the Medicaid losses. Who are those folks? They are folks, for example, in my state, over half the babies born in rural communities are on Medicaid. They could see those basic OBGYN rights disappear. It's a lot of kids who are special ed kids in all of our schools. Many of those special ed kids have their needs taken care of by Medicaid. They could lose those healthcare benefits as well. It's frankly, a lot of what's happening in this bill is not just on Medicaid, but it's food assistance. I think we would all agree that kids ought to go to school not on an empty stomach. But this bill would literally cut food assistance for school breakfasts, school lunches. And then if you had to add on cruelty just for the sake of gratuitous cruelty, this legislation also cuts food banks. Now, let's not only throw you off of your healthcare needs, let's make it more difficult for folks in rural America to find a hospital that will help them with OBGYN needs. Let's not only take on school lunches, but then let's go ahead and cut food banks as well. We're a better country than this. Let me just add one other thing, Anna, that hasn't gotten as much attention. There may be some people that says, well, I actually buy my health insurance through the exchange, the healthcare exchange that was created out of Obamacare, where small businesses, individuals, a lot of folks who are gig workers, a lot of folks who are performers, they go to the healthcare exchange. And the question is, what's happened with those folks is they have decreased dramatically the premium support for folks who buy their health insurance through these exchanges. And you will see people that are making 60 grand a year, but they might have $700, $800, or $900 healthcare premium increases, even in the private marketplace, if this bill passes. So it is obviously awful for the most vulnerable Americans, but there's an awful lot of working middle-class Americans who will be hurt by this as well. I want to take a question from Alex Casio. It's a very good question. Procedurally, what can be filibustered? And can the filibuster be used to stop this bill? Unfortunately, Alex, the answer is no. And the reason is, and this will make, for those of you who kind of scratch your head and saying, that doesn't make sense. Well, let me explain. Literally back, I think it was in the 70s, it was the 80s, there was a legislation passed that called budget reconciliation. And this was when our debt was not at 37 trillion. It was a much smaller amount. And then a guy named Robert Byrd, the senator from West Virginia, said we ought to be able to, if we can actually cut the debt or cut the deficit, we ought to have a special procedure that you can get 51 votes on and not have to get the full filibuster at 60. Well, the craziness is that budget reconciliation process, which is supposed to be about lowering the deficit and the debt, has been changed around so much that this big ugly bill that is unfair and dreadful for everyone in this country, they're trying to use that budget reconciliation process. Now, there are certain provisions in this bill that don't touch the actual numbers, like I just talked about Medicaid, that may get thrown out, like some of this awful things that says that a court injunctive order can't be used across the country. That could get thrown out. There are some, there's restriction in this bill that came over from the House that said no state should be able to do any artificial intelligence regulations. Do you really want to have the kind of potential abuse of non-consensual images, or a young person's face put on a body that's not their own on an AI tool? Well, this bill is currently stated would preclude any state from saying, hey, even if the feds aren't going to regulate AI, we are. Now, our hope is that will be thrown out. It's actually even called the bird bath, BYRD, named after the senator who put this whole process together. But on these core financial issues, it really can get by with 51 votes. Now, there are 53 Republican senators, and then you've got the vice president. So all we need is to get 4 to 5 Republican senators to say, and many of them are saying privately, oh gosh, I think this is awful. Well, we need them not to just say privately to me or to other senators, this is awful. They need to actually vote their conscience. And this is why I would echo what Senator Markley said. Even if you live in a state with Democratic senators, you've got probably some Republican House members. You've got to make them reconsider, because the procedure will end up being, if the Senate is able to pass this bill, it will be changed. It will have to go back to the House. And remember, this bill passed in the House only by 1 vote. So even if you got a state with Democratic senators, go to your Republican House members and let's elevate the issue of how awful this is. I want to get somebody a question now from Sawyer Hackett's audience member, Mike. Have heard the tax bill will raise prices. If it will, how much will it cost me? Well, there's a couple of different ways we're going to see price increase. Remember, Trump got elected because folks thought grocery prices were going up too much. And obviously, we've seen nothing really lower prices from this president. If anything, his tariff policy has actually increased prices. And I think you will see those tariff policies as they really hit closer to the end of June, because again, some of those policies haven't really taken effect because there were things that were shipped before the tariffs got in place. But all of that shipping is kind of have gone through the system. So most economists say starting right after June, you're going to see dramatic price increases. Now, the bill itself, how will it raise prices? Well, it's going to raise healthcare costs, because if you cut out Medicaid, and then if you say to the private insurance market, those people who get, even insurance premiums, their prices will go up, and that will disrupt the whole healthcare market. So you can say, well, gosh, I'm making, $150,000, my family, I'm going to be okay. I get private health insurance. This bill will so disrupt the whole healthcare pricing system that you will see healthcare costs go up dramatically. And that's even before, Mike, one of the things that's so darn unfair, this bill literally, if you are making minimum wage in America, and most people are working minimum wage, they got to work not 1, but oftentimes 2 jobs. If you're making minimum wage in America, your taxes from this bill will go up 53%. No matter what they say otherwise, we got plenty of data that shows they'll go up 53%. People at the very top, that top 10th of 1%, on average, are going to get $188,000 tax cut. Now, listen, I was lucky to do well in business before I got involved in politics. I got no problem with people who take a risk getting rewarded, but there ought to be a fairness to our system. And if you're blessed to do well, paying your fair share ought to be part of that contribution and obligation we have as Americans. What is not fair is to say that folks who are making minimum wage are going to see their taxes go dramatically up, and that the richest people in America are going to have, on average, $188,000 tax cut. That's just not fair or right. So, Mike, thanks for asking that question. Xavier from Instagram is saying, what can we do as citizens? Let your voices be heard. And part of this means, Xavier, we got to have hard conversations. I think sometimes too much we get in our own kind of little silos and just talk to people that agree with us. I don't know you, but I don't know many Americans, and including myself, that don't have family members or friends or others who voted for Trump or voted for some of these Republican senators. And you need to say, is this really what you wanted? Did you want, a place where the most vulnerable Americans lose their health care? Do you really want kids going to school hungry? Do you really want food banks cut? Do you really want to have a tax code that even pushes more money to folks at the top and takes people at minimum wage and pushes them their taxes up by 53%? So I think if we can have people that maybe supported Trump come out and say, hey, this is not what I bargained for. And as specifically as a citizen, one of the things I'd also urge you to do is where you can say, well, my congressman, my senator may vote for this. Well, let your local Republican elected officials happen. This is only happening with one team. Those of us who are Democrats, we can raise our voices. We are making our case, but this is all being driven by our Republican friends. They need to hear from that local school board member, that local city council member, that local state legislator that's a Republican, that this is going to be bad for everyone. Last question from Kate Barr. This bill will have a huge impact on rural communities. And this is exactly what I say. The same communities who voted for Trump. Well, one of the things I've always done is I don't leave behind any part of my state. I got wide swaths of Southwest and Southside Virginia that are as rural as any place in America. I am down there all the time saying, hey, we got wide swaths of my state that there's not a rural hospital around, or if there's a rural hospital around, they don't have OBGYN services that can deliver a baby. You have this bill pass, you're going to have rural hospitals across America closed down. You're going to have even less services available. We've already seen these communities. I think about the fact that I've got about 4 or 5 big development projects that literally got awarded money before the end of the Biden administration from the IRA, the bill that did a lot of the energy tax credits. All that money's been frozen. They've already been screwed. So, in many ways, this bill has a bigger tendency to hit rural Americans than most. I want to now turn it over to somebody who really is kind of our quarterback on particularly the tax issues. It's my friend Ron Wyden from Oregon. He has been the chairman of the Finance Committee. When we made a lot of progress on healthcare, Ron Wyden was our leader. When we made a lot of progress on the IRA, on the clean energy tax credits, Ron Wyden is our leader. Ron Wyden is now the ranking member, but not the chairman. That is until we take back the Senate. But he is really the person that can dive as deep a details as you want on particularly the tax, finance, and Medicaid provisions of this awful bill. So let me turn it over to my dear friend from Oregon, Ron Wyden.